Paul, and welcome to another E5 Group podcast. I'm your host, Dan Jackson, aka Dan the Engineer, and today I welcome Paul Skirm. Hello, Paul.
Hello, Dan. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Very well indeed. Now, Paul Skirm is another founding member of the E5 Group. And what we're doing in this podcast is just having a chat between me and Paul and finding more out about Paul, because amongst the founding members and other members of the E5 Group, a lot of people are quite prevalent, if you like, on social media. But Paul, you stay away a little bit.
Yeah, I do. I'm not a massive. I can't say I'm avid user. I suppose I'm not an avid user of social media in the same way that the rest of you are. I think I'm a bit more reserved, a bit more shy, perhaps.
And we call Paul the lead technical guy within the E5 Group. So we go to Paul for a lot of queries, and his skill set is incredible, and that's why we're having this sort of chat and trying to get to know a bit more about Paul's career and how he got where he is now, because I think it's very inspiring in terms of engineering, and I think it's good to let others know what direction you can take within your career, because I kind of view the basis of electrical as an electrician is kind of like the core, and there's nice little niche areas or sectors that you can move into. That's what I kind of wanted to explore with you, Paul. So what would you say your role is now?
At the moment, I've got as far as now doing machinery safety consultancy, mechanical and electrical safety consultancy on manufacturing plants, on small individual machinery, do some stuff on 7671 consulting. Most of my work now is off the tools. I still have a few customers that I look after their machinery and their installations for locally, where I live down in South Wales, but most of my work these days is consulting.
Okay, so you'd say mechanical and electrical engineer,
yeah, I suppose so. Yeah,
is sort of the basis of what you do, but obviously on a consultancy level. When we talk about machinery, I know you wrote an article for NAPIT on machinery, which was a fantastic article and well received. To a lot of electricians, when I've spoken about kind of what you do, just trying to explain in layman terms, you've got LV that comes into the machine. So you work on what comes into the machine and also the actual machine itself in terms of the mechanical side.
Yes, yeah. I mean, BS7671 sort of, building wiring everything up into the machinery isolator, and from then on, the machinery standards take over and all the machinery safety stuff kicks in. So whilst I was qualified, well, I suppose I said I'm qualified to do the electrical installations work and do all that side of it. My background is primarily in the machinery side of the business, of the industry, doing machinery panel work, fault finding, repairs, diagnostics. On the machines themselves, I worked for control systems manufacturers. I've worked for third-party control systems repair companies. I've worked for a machine tool manufacturer. So my role's always been, it's a machine, you're there to fix it, just sort it out. Doesn't matter whether it's mechanical, electrical, just fix it. Get it fixed for the customer so the machine's working,
And you don't just work in the UK, do you?
No, I've been, I suppose the furthest I think we've been from home is China. A couple of times to do some consultancy for a company in China. Don't get much further away, really, does it, in all honesty?
That's pretty far, Paul.
Yeah.
And I bet that's interesting, going to China in terms of culture and the difference between the UK and China as well.
Oh yeah. The first time I went out there to work, we did a 2-week stint right through. I think you were still traveling then, because I think we were about in the same time zone at one point. I think, weren't we?
Yeah.
It was an interesting time, that's for sure. Different culture, different attitude, and where I was working was not a tourist part of China.
Right.
So there was another guy from the UK out there with me who was the European sort of representative for the company. Yeah. And we were in the same hotel. I mean, we traveled out on the weekend. We started work on the Monday morning. We worked Monday through to Saturday all day. We worked Sunday morning in the office, in the hotel, Went for a walk on the Sunday afternoon, and it was quite quite an experience, really, because it was a bit of a little and large thing going on. Because Steve, the guy that was with me, is 6 foot something, and I need to lose a bit of weight, and we were the only European people in the city, probably, or them, maybe not in the whole city, but walking down the street, which was as busy as London.
Yeah.
On a Saturday, and this was a Sunday afternoon, and we were the only white faces anywhere, and the school kids were literally looking up at us and looking, pointing, because we were. They don't get a lot of foreigners. They don't get a lot of people in that area because it's off the beaten track,
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I've kind of been in similar situations across the world where, like, mainly my children, really, because they're blonde young kids, especially in India, places we've been to, never seen white people, let alone blonde kids, and they're like amazed. But yeah, no, it's good to be able to experience working elsewhere across the world, I guess, because it is different. And one thing I love about this game in general, electrical, whatever you want to call it, or electrical, mechanical, is the travel. Really, you get to go around the country and just experience new things.
Well, I do, yeah, certainly. I mean, as we talk now, I'm sat in a hotel up in Stratford in London.
Yeah.
Been doing some work on a railway line this week, or I am doing some work on a railway line this week. M&E inspections, safety inspections. Actually, to put them more correctly, it's a pure assessment under the provisional use of work equipment regulations, and a bit of an audit on lifts and escalators.
Okay.
Machinery directive, and lifts come under the lift directive, but they're not that different, really. It's just a bit of machinery. It's M&E.
Okay, Paul. So I'm going to try and work our way from the beginning to try and ascertain how you got into this, because it's very different to what a lot of electricians, if you like, are kind of used to. And I get loads of people come to me, Paul, and they're always asking about career progression and saying, what can I go into? What can I do? And there's no real route to go. It's a personal choice. And obviously a lot of the time we kind of fall into routes. We don't mean to, it just kind of happens. So where did you start? Did you do an apprenticeship at all?
I did an apprenticeship back in the early to mid 80s in industry, in factory maintenance. I did an apprenticeship which was covered by the, let me get this right, Engineering Industry Training Board. That's going back a few years, the EITB.
Before my time.
Things that have gone now. There was the EITB, the CITB, and RTITB, and there was a few others, and they're all gone now, the old industry training boards. They've been replaced by something else, I think. I started off as a single skilled apprentice, and they multi-skilled me, and I ended up doing work in 3 trades when I was an apprentice, but I was only allowed to do college in 2 of them.
What trades were they?
Mechanical, maintenance, and fabrication and welding.
All right.
I ended up doing electrical work as well, but they wouldn't let me do college in that as well. I could only do the 2. So I ended up finishing off as a mechanical apprentice with the mechanical City and Guilds and fabrication and welding City and Guilds. So I had to do my electrical qualifications later. But I was doing college 1 day and 3 evenings a week, and the day was like 9 till 9.
Yeah.
So that was 1 evening, and then the other 3 evenings was 6 till 9.
Wow.
And that was for the whole college year. So I was doing two City and Guilds qualifications a year, but I think it was, I didn't object to that. I just thought it was a way of progressing my career, even back then, strings to the bow and everything.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I've always kind of said to youngsters, when you're young and you've not got responsibility, i.e. kids,
yeah,
it's your opportunity to kind of knuckle down and work. And I've always worked hard and grafted, but I've also partied at the same time. So, but I've always learned, I've always worked, and it's about getting that balance. But when you're young, I think you have so much more chance to kind of do these things. So
yeah.
I think some people don't realise that.
No, they don't. And if you get a good grounding under yourself and your skills wise when you're young, or when you start in, I mean, when I started as an apprentice, there was an upper cut-off age. If you were 19, you could not do an apprenticeship. You start the apprenticeship at 16, 17 or 18 and that was it. Once you
Yeah.
hit 19, you could not start the trade. That was just not allowed. It's not possible.
This has always been a problem though, because there's a lot of mid-20s, even people in their 30s, who are really capable and have great potential. However, once they've got a mortgage, or they've moved out of their parents and they've got more financial responsibilities, it is tricky, because essentially when you're learning at the beginning, it's exactly that. You're learning. You're not making anybody any money. A lot of the time, it is tricky. It is tricky. And again, youngsters, it's, I mean, how a 16-year-old knows what they want to be when they're older is.
Yeah, they're few and far between. I mean, to be honest, it was pressure from my parents to go in and get a trade and get out and earn money. My father was a tradesman. My father was a fitter and turner. My grandfather was a blacksmith. So I come from a line of tradesmen, as it were, in the sort of engineering side of the business.
Yeah.
And it was, my parents pressured me into. They didn't force me at all, but my father's idea of me doing A levels and a degree was not his sort of thing,
Yeah.
So they encouraged me to, and they did pressure me. It didn't force me, but I'd been messing around with bits and pieces with my dad, and doing stuff around the house and fixing bicycles and helping him with the car and all the sort of things that you do, from an early age. So it was natural for me to fall into a trade. So
Yeah.
my parents were sort of pushing me to go down that trade route. It was just natural. My father was a tradesman. My grandfathers, even though I didn't know them because they passed away before I was born, they were tradesmen, and we had a lot of tradesmen around my parents' circle of friends. So it just wasn't unusual,
Yeah. So once you completed your apprenticeships, and you qualified, where did it go next, or when did it sort of change direction?
Well, from then I went into a few factory maintenance jobs where, again, we were multi-skilled. It was just doing whatever came along. The one company that I came straight out of my apprenticeship and went into was a Phoenix company from a company that had gone bankrupt and restarted, management buyout. Probably a lot of the listeners will actually have heard of the company, believe it or not. It was the old Metoy toy company. They used to make the Corgi cars.
All
Remember
right.
the die-cast Corgi car models?
I don't, Paul. No.
Honestly. Oh, okay. You had toy cars when you were a kid? Corgi toy cars?
Pro- Probably. The name
Yeah,
doesn't ring a bell.
yeah, but I worked on factory maintenance there when they restarted as Corgi after the Metoy company went bankrupt. Again, we were multi-skilled. It was a case of literally everything from electrical, helping the painter and decorator if they needed to paint the offices, to mowing lawns around the office block when we had visitors. I got paid the same. I think of monkeys. I was young. I just did it. Just didn't care.
I can't imagine you doing it now.
I'm still going to mow my own lawns.
Yeah, of course.
But I wanted to go on and do HNC, so that I did, and I funded all of that myself out of my own pocket. I took unpaid time off work to do my HNC, where I would finish early and work overtime the rest of the week to make up the hours, or I'd work a Saturday morning without pay to make up the hours that I'd had off during the week to do my HNC. So my employers were good in that respect.
Yeah. I mean, what was it? Is it just a personal choice that you wanted to
Yeah,
continue? It's
yeah. I just wanted to go on. I didn't want to be, even back then, I thought, I'd seen my father work on the tools all his life, and what he'd done to his body, and the problems he'd had with his hands and his knees and everything. And I thought, do you know what? I don't want to end up like that when I'm 50 and 60. I'd rather get myself into a position where I'm not crawling around damp floors or laying in attics in 2 foot of fiberglass insulation until I'm 65. Decision early in my early years to try and get some qualifications under my belt and be able to move the bar and move on and move up. But management never interested me.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the thing is, personal development is an attitude, isn't it?
Yeah, it
It's
is.
it's a you know, obviously employment and your employers can help and guide because we spend so much time investing our time into a company we work for.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it is your own career. And I've learned over the years is that, you know, you have to spend a lot of time in your own time developing and
Oh yeah.
upskilling and learning. And honestly, Paul, I must do my self CPD an hour a day, 6 days a week, probably. And when you add up that time, experience and knowledge is everything. It literally is everything, and you know it doesn't. It's not handed on a plate. So I think I think it's good to hear, you know, other people to kind of look at your career and go, well, you know, ultimately you weren't put where you were, Paul.
Oh no.
You've earned it. You've put the hours in.
Yeah.
You've kind of sourced your own route and made it. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I had some helpful, or employers were flexible. I mean, they had their hours out of me, but they were willing to allow me to do things like finish early in lieu of working overtime and stuff instead. But they won on that one because we're back talking about back in the times when overtime was paid at time and a half
Yeah.
that morning. But if I had 2 hours off in a week, I'd have to work 2 hours on Saturday morning, whack. So I
Yeah.
lost my half, you know. So they won from that aspect. They only paid me
Yeah.
straight for the 2 hours on a Saturday. It was never 2 hours; it was always 4 hours or 6 hours. And then, I mean, I did two roles in factory maintenance, both of them multi-skilled. Say doing anything and everything. They were small manufacturing companies, and it was just a case of we were all a team. You know, if somebody needed help, you helped them. If you were there and you didn't have a job, or the foreman would allocate you to help them, you helped them. Because that was the way I was brought up. That was the way I was taught. You know, even when I was an apprentice, um, you were allocated to a tradesman, and on the shift that I was on, one tradesman didn't have a breakdown. They would go and help the others. The fitters would go and help the sparks. The sparks would go and help the fitters. There was no them and us attitude, which was unusual because it was the motor industry in the 80s, and you know we had quite a good team ethic from when I was an apprentice. You know.
At what point did you? I mean, everything you said so far doesn't really steer towards BS 7671.
Yeah. Okay. So it doesn't, and that didn't come in. Obviously, factory maintenance, BS 7671. We used to do little bits of wiring updates and small changes and stuff. But yeah, you're right. It wasn't. It really wasn't 7671 related specifically until much later on when I went back to do the electrical qualifications that I'd been lacking after having done all the experience. Um, After I finished, I did 2 factory maintenance posts after my apprenticeship, and then I went to work for a machine tool manufacturer as a installation and service engineer. And that was
Okay.
very much an M&E role because it was, well, that's our machine. It doesn't matter whether it's mechanical or electrical. You got to fix it. You got to install it. You got to get it working. And I was very lucky there in that I started to do my degree with the Open University. Again, a decision I made, and I paid for most of it myself. And with it being Open University, I studied it in my own time.
Yeah.
And the company were reasonably flexible in they did pay for a few of my courses, which were more related to perhaps work than others, or they believed. Um, and after that, I when I finished my degree in gosh 2004 maybe. I started it. It took me about 10 years to do my degree. And
Wow.
you said about kids and stuff earlier. Really funny in that I signed up to start my degree, and then just after that, found out my wife was expecting twins, but we weren't married then.
Wow.
Yeah, a bit too late to stop one or the other. Like you know what I mean? So through my kids' early years, I was working and studying for a degree with the Open University at the same time.
Do you think your degree has helped your career
Yeah.
in terms of moving into consultancy?
Oh yeah, definitely. It also steered my career path later on after I left the machine tool company. I went into work as a staff engineer in a manufacturing plant, looking after manufacturing lines as a production engineer. Didn't really take to doing that at all because I was stuck behind a desk all day, flying a CAD station, and it didn't suit me. So I went back out on the road, having been a machine tool service engineer for like 9 years, as a third-party controls. I went to work for a third-party control systems repair company, and we were doing sort of CNCs, PLCs, servo drives, conventional control systems on machinery for anybody and everybody right across the South Wales M4 corridor.
Yeah.
Going up to Hereford, Worcester, Birmingham, up into Mid Wales. I covered sort of that sort of corner of the country for them. Didn't really get on with the company, didn't like it, so I walked. I left them. Had a signed contract, didn't really get the contract, wasn't fulfilled, so I just decided I was going to leave without a job to go, and 2 kids and a third one on the way.
Yeah.
Which was quite a bold thing to do, or crazy, depending on which way you look at it.
It is, and to be honest, Paul, I'm from Surrey, and I've always worked in London and the southeast, and us in this part of the country, we're quite spoilt for work, really. There's, London is always booming, and there does seem to be other parts of the country that, there's not as much work as London.
Oh, certainly.
You know what I mean? It does seem that when you are further away from London, you do have to travel a lot more for work, regardless.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, as I said, that job there that I had with the third party repair company, I was based in Swansea and I was covering everywhere, or up and past the Severn Bridge into England, up to Birmingham, down into the southwest, past Somerset, past Bristol and Somerset, up into the Welsh valleys, all of the industry across down the M4 corridor, because that's the sort of distances that we had to go as a company to find the work,
Yeah.
But I say I left them, didn't get on with them. I had a signed contract of employment signed by one of the directors and myself, and the terms and conditions were never carried through by them.
Right.
So I left. But I had an interview with another company, because I was unhappy with the way they were treating me. So I managed to move on again. I handed my notice in and finished. I was off for like a week before I started another job.
Yeah.
And that was with a control systems manufacturer, where I was responsible for all sorts of stuff. And looking back now, because I've started doing my chartered engineer application and my fellowship application, I was actually working back in 2000 on what has now since become called Industry 4.
Okay.
The Internet of Things is the other thing they call it. I was remotely monitoring machinery from my dorm or my office at home in Swansea back in 2001. We were monitoring features and characteristics of machinery.
Back in 2001.
Yeah.
Which is quite impressive, really, because the internet age, I mean, that was the start of it, really, wasn't it? Socially.
I had my first laptop in 1996.
Yeah.
Maybe 97. My first email account would have been back then as well, when we were with the machine tool company, because all our machines were CNC programmable. We had to have a laptop to talk to them.
Yeah.
But yeah, working for the the control systems manufacturer, I ended up getting involved with retrofits, where we were taking old product off machinery and putting new product on, new generation product. I suppose you'd think about it now as relating it back to the electrical world, taking a rewirable fuse board, putting in an all RCBO fuse board with AFDDs and everything, but without increasing the safety of the installation, maybe, but without increasing the functionality of the actual installation itself.
Right. Yeah.
So we would modify machinery to increase the safety or to put modern product on, but to stay within the rules of machinery safety and the machinery regulations. We wouldn't make the machine any faster. We wouldn't make it any efficient. We wouldn't make it have any new features over and above what it already had.
So it's about increasing safety.
Yeah, increasing safety and increasing and putting modern product on, which was still supportable, could still be serviced, we could still get spare parts for it, rather than 20-year-old product which the parts are obsolete for, you know.
So there's a lot of obviously a lot of electricians who will be listening to this, and obviously the main standard that us electricians work to is 7671, the obvious one.
Yeah.
If you work in other parts, like obviously I do fire alarm 5839, emergency lighting, and everything else. But the amount of standards that you have to work towards.
Oh yeah. Once you start getting machinery side, it just skyrockets. I mean, I suppose the equivalent to 767 on the machinery side is a standard EN 60204-1, and then it just goes on from there. I mean, I could reel off dozens and dozens and dozens
Oh,
and dozens, but
we run out of time.
exactly.
I think my laptop
Yeah.
will die.
But it was then with the control systems company, because we were modifying machinery, we were starting to ask customers questions like, what's the earthing like on your installation? Are we safe to upgrade this machine? We were doing all our due diligence on making sure that it was safe for us to modify the equipment. And the customers were coming back and saying, oh, we don't know. What do you mean you don't know? Is your earthing up to date on your machine? Have we got, what's the fault current? We're going to change this equipment. What's the fault current of the machine? And they go, no, we don't know. So that's when I started having to get into it, because I had a review with my boss, these annual review things you get with these larger companies. And he said, and we're talking about this, and he went, we sort of both decided that we didn't have anybody in the organization that when we're doing these retrofits could talk to the client about the fixed installation, and could talk to the client's contractors about the fixed installation on the same level with the same sort of qualifications. And his words to me were, you better get that sorted then, didn't you? So I ended up going back to college then and doing the Electrical City and Guilds, which I never did when I was an apprentice because they wouldn't let me.
What year was that?
Oh, 2000. Yeah. So I did, what City and Guilds numbers they were, I can't remember now, but I did my levels 2 and 3 theory back in sort of 2001, 2, 3, whatever it was, 4, I can't remember. Then I went on and did the 16th on the Brown Book.
Yeah.
Did inspection and testing, the 2391, and the what used to be the 2400, but when I did it was the 2391 Part 2, the design course.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
had a master's degree by then. I already had a master's in engineering when I was doing the 2400 one, the 2391 Part 2 design course.
How did you find those courses at the time?
I gotta say, the 2391 Part 2, because it was closed book exam when I did it as well.
Yeah.
From what I can remember, Craigie, it wasn't multi-choice. It was long handwritten answers.
Yeah, yeah.
Not the easiest things in the world, They certainly sorted out the men from the boys, as the saying goes, which is probably not the right thing to say these days. But it wasn't an easy course, and I didn't expect. I wouldn't, to be honest. I don't think they should be an easy course.
No.
Because you're designing the fundamental safety into the installation with one of them. You're designing the installation to be safe and protect people from electric shocks, protect properties from fire. They shouldn't be an easy course. And then with the other one, you're assessing the safety of the installation, or you're being examined on assessing the safety of the installation. When you're doing inspection testing, periodic inspection testing, or the fundamental, the initial verification. So I don't think they should be an easy exam to pass.
Yeah, I agree big time. I mean, I done the 2391, not the current version, the first version.
Yeah.
And I done that before I actually qualified as an electrician. I put myself on the course, and I loved it, Paul. I really loved it because it really helped me understand testing for the first time. And I learned very quickly when I started my apprenticeship. We used to do a lot of shop fit outs. We used to do a lot of restaurants and stuff like that. And even things like catering guys. So you've got a commercial kitchen, they're putting catering equipment in, which are electrical, and they have no knowledge on BS 7671 at all.
Yeah.
And so what the route that you've taken, and what you said about how your boss said, well, you better sort that out then and be that bridge, is what needs to happen. Because me and Paul were talking about this other day with fire alarm panels. Paul Meenan was talking about fire alarm engineers connecting to the mains, And the thing is, there could be massive issues with that, and there needs to be an understanding, like a bridge gap, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I could tell a story about that one, but that's for another day. It was a burglar alarm rather than a fire alarm, and it was a domestic. But that's a story for another day. I mean, yeah, my boss, to be fair, was very proactive at that time, and the company was very proactive. I wouldn't say we were risk averse. It was quite a balanced company as far as risk goes. We would push the envelope as far as what the company normally did. We would do things out of the ordinary, which is why we ended up doing a lot of development for our parent company on the Internet of Things. We ended up doing a lot of stuff on condition monitoring. I mean, I ended up being put on City and Guilds vibration analysis courses for bearing vibrations and stuff like this. So I have level 2 and level 3 vibration analysis courses under my belt for analysing bearing failures and monitoring bearings and vibrations and stuff like that, because it was part and parcel of what we were doing with we didn't have a name for it at the time, what has since become the Internet of Things, and how you can, and Industry 4 on monitoring machinery and monitoring machinery performance. But we just called it condition monitoring back then. We just didn't have a name for it. One of the biggest limitations we had was the maximum speed we had was 115k dual channel ISDN to play with, which is slower than 3G,
Yeah.
And so getting the data, we had to look for very thin client stuff where it was very, very small amounts of data coming back to give you what you needed. But by the time I got made redundant from that, I had all my electrical City and Guilds and everything. And having done an apprenticeship, I thought, well, I've got to find my way. I've been made redundant. I got 3 kids. So I ended up with a small engineering company doing machinery maintenance and machinery repairs. And then we extended that out to becoming an NIC approved contractor.
Yeah.
In all the years I was an NIC approved contractor to S&PDH for probably 9 years. And I think we only ever had one minor non-compliance in all of those years.
What, that many? So, and obviously now you're a freelance consultant.
Yeah, got through doing that. Got chance meeting through LinkedIn, I suppose, ineffectively, believe it or not. Contacted a guy who used to do consultancy for me. He said to me, what are you doing now? So I told him, and he said, do you want to do some consultancy? Did I want to do some consultancy for him? And I went, yeah, okay. And, then he's got me into doing that. I'm doing a lot of savvy work, to be fair. A lot of what I'm doing this week, I'm working for myself. The China job was for myself. I've been to Turkey for myself. I've done a few jobs around locally. But a lot of the work that I do, I've been to Germany as a subcontractor. I've been to Ireland, all over the UK, literally all over the UK, Scotland, England, Ireland, Wales.
Yeah. And what would you say? Is there any advice you could give to people looking to, move around their career a little bit? They've got electrical background. What advice would you give to people?
Get the underpinning knowledge, understand, get the qualifications, get the underpinning knowledge, because I think that's what's enabled me to look at things in a different way. Understanding fundamental principles, I don't mean to mean Ohm's law, but it is important because it's one of the founding principles, is just to understand the engineering, the underlying engineering of how a piece of equipment works.
Yeah.
Not just being able to draw a star delta circuit or a direct online circuit. Understand why it's a star delta circuit, what it's all about, figure out the requirements so that you understand it on you can almost look at a machine and figure out what it's supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
Because you've got that knowledge of the systems that go to put it together. Because it doesn't matter how big the machine is, it's just a series of contactors, relays, push buttons and wires, and maybe there's a PLC, but most often the PLC very rarely goes wrong. It either works or it doesn't. It's everything else around it that fails, the electromechanical bits that fail.
Fault finding can be fun.
Yeah, it can be fun. It can also be very challenging.
Yeah, of course it can. Of course it can.
More than once like, you're not getting anywhere, right, and we have coffee now. And the production manager's like, machine's not working. I said, but I'm going to fix it until I have a cup of coffee, because your mind's gone blank. You've explored every avenue you can think of, and you just need space. You just need to go out and breathe. You just need to stop and take stock and think.
Well, the thing is, Paul, we're not machines. We're human.
Yeah.
We work very differently to these mechanical machines. So,
Yeah.
and finally, Paul, I'm just going to wrap this up. What do you do outside of work?
I have a family. I have 3 kids. Try and spend as much time with them as I can. But running my own business, it takes up an awful lot of your time.
Yeah.
Yeah. An awful lot of your time.
Family life.
Family life, yeah. You know,
but I know you like a gig.
Oh yeah, I do like music, yes. Whenever we get a chance, we'll see. I like my rock music. I've had to turn it off now because we're talking about this. Otherwise, I'd have had the rock music accompanying me in my hotel room. But yeah,
we can't have that in the background, Paul, because you know, it'll probably be some sort of copyright infringement when we post this publicly.
True. Yeah. That's right.
All right, Paul. Well, thank you very much for chatting with us today. It's been an absolute pleasure to be able to chat to you a little bit more. And thanks. I mean, it's to all the listeners, obviously, whatever time you're listening to this, but it's almost 11 p.m. how we're talking. So I'm
emails to send yet tonight. It's ready for tomorrow morning.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, thank you very much for listening to this podcast. What you can do for us, which really helps, is to share these podcasts on social media and sort of make a bit of a noise and engage with us. There's a lot of free CPD that we produce on these podcasts, which this one's more just of a chatty thing. And I think, you know, a lot of people can gain a lot from understanding people's careers and what direction you can go. So, yeah, really appreciate it. Thanks for the chat, Paul, and we'll see everybody on the next one. Goodbye.
Bye.